Appreciate that, Ross. It means a lot.
It's true. Okay, anytime you're ready to go.
Okay, let's do this. Hey guys, welcome to Around the Campfire podcast, where we sit down with great minds from around the world to see what we can learn from them to step up in our purpose, our dating lives, and living life on our terms as conscious alphas. Today on the show, we have the godfather of seduction, Mr. Ross Jeffriess. I'm super excited to talk to him and learn from him, and I'm sure you are too. And without further ado, Mr. Ross Jeffriess, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I want to say that I don't often, that's an exaggeration. That's no exaggeration. That's an understatement. I never talk about seduction anymore. I've retooled and rebranded to talk about persuasion and influence for sales. But I'm so moved by your writing. You write so beautifully, and there's no way someone who writes that way cannot also be walking the walk that they talk. So thank you for doing that. You're a very powerful voice for men, and I appreciate you having me on the show.
Absolutely, and I appreciate the work that you've done that kind of laid the groundwork for what I did or what I'm doing as well. I watched one of your videos when you hit me up on the 21 convention, and it was kind of your thing on speed seduction and whatnot. And it was crazy. Like you started figuring this shit out like in 1988, and that was like a year before I was born. And I was just like, holy shit! Like, and just some like the words that you were using that described some of the topics or just some of the things that you noticed in your clients and students that men were struggling with. I was like, yeah, I'm like, I've seen that exact thing. I know exactly what he's talking about, but I just didn't have words to it. And I always feel that whenever I'm trying to describe things, it's like I see the patterns. Like pattern recognition is really easy for me, but then finding the words to articulate it to other people and then like describe it to people to teach other men. So thank you. It's been a great help. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about that. I know you said that you're going into teaching sales and persuasion, and that's great too. I'm sure that wasn't that big of a leap to go from seduction to that. But what got you into, in the beginning, helping men with their dating lives?
Well, that's easy. My own pain.
Okay.
I went through tremendous amount of pain attempting to connect with women, and a lot of shame, a lot of trauma, and simply being clueless. I didn't have any good male role models around me. My father was one of my personal heroes, but he didn't know what he was doing in his relationship to my mother. He certainly didn't model a good early. Now, don't get me wrong, but my father worked 3 jobs to put food on the table for 6 kids and my cousins. So 7 kids and my mom and my dad. Mm-hmm. So my father, in his absence, was not absent because he was a bad man. Quite the opposite. He was doing his duty. And my older brother was clueless too. So I had no idea where I was going. Plus, I had a tremendous amount of body shame and trauma from some early childhood stuff and teenage years. And I think, by the way, we cannot underestimate the amount of trauma, both chronic and acute, that everyone has to deal with, all humans. What to say males who in this society more and more are being demonized. We never had this when I was a teenager or a young man.
Yeah.
This is the weaponization of public dialogue. And so that's how I got into it. And I tried many things, but I've always had a passion for language. When I stumbled on NLP back in 1987, I thought, wow, there could be some answers here. And it took me about 2.5 years to work it out. 2.5 very painful years. Maybe that's part of the definition of being alphas, the willingness to walk side by side with pain, and not define yourself by the pain.
Yeah, I like that definition a lot. I think too, it's a lot of guys aren't aware of the pain that they still deal with, or like the wounds. I feel like a lot now, even with me, with helping guys and helping them, because the main thing is like, what does every guy want? He wants more confidence, right? More confidence with women and whatnot. And before, I think a lot of people were looking for like quick fixes, get the leather jacket or you get this and then you feel confident. And I feel like it's kind of coming out of that, and it's going into what are the wounds like from a young age or whatever that are holding you back from just feeling confident? Like your default should be confidence. So if it's not, then what prevented you from doing that, and how can you heal it and let that go so you can get back to your default, which is just feeling good and accepting yourself.
I think part of the problem, Ricky, is we live in a culture where we're immersed in confusing messages.
Yeah.
Men are portrayed, if you look at movies, one of the common, my cat, by the way, is just ripping on one of her toys. She's trying to disembowel it, so I'm watching her do that. She's about 1 year and 3 months old, so she's still a kitten, even though she's grown up. I love
Nice.
cats. I'm a catophile. Anyway, you look at the culture in which we're immersed. Men are portrayed in movies as either being clueless sex beggars or bullies or nice guys. There's no real portrayal of what it is to be an effective man who moves through the world. Common plot line, I've seen it in so many movies, is the guy's a real stud. He's a ladies' man. He goes back home for his high school reunion. He sees his high school sweetheart who rejected him, suddenly turns into a beggar who's outside her window throwing flowers at her, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he turns into a wuss, and she winds up loving him because he's a stumbling wuss.
Right.
So, and then men are, I talk about the 5 Bs: bullying, begging, buying, BS, and booze. And I'll add a 6th, biceps. So these are the options we're taught. And I think men, beyond everything else, want to be effective. Men will do what, I was talking to my girlfriend who's so beautiful. I'm not bragging, I'm telling you the truth. Women hit on her. Women try to grope her. We went for Thai massages for my birthday. And the female therapist groped her breasts. And
That's
she
awesome.
tells me stories of what guys have tried with her before we were dating, and even now. And guys are clueless. But she said, why do guys do this? I said, because, honey, guys will do what they think works. And what we're taught that ought to work doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. Like, we're definitely in a weird time where there is no real role models for men. And I feel like, yeah, it's like men are either demonized, or like even in entertainment and whatnot, you see like the character types that people look to are men are being very watered down. And it's like now it's the empowered woman and the kind of the nerdy guy that supports the empowered woman, because the guy is so useless that he can't be the leader anymore. And it's kind of sad, like you said, like you're 3 generations younger than me, and you know, I feel it in my generation. Like, I feel like I've even myself, even all the work I've done, I'm like, man, I'm still such a pussy in so many ways. But I see it with guys that don't even work on themselves. I'm like, man, you guys need help. Like, you know, like let's get our shit together, guys.
There's another, that's all true, and not but. There's a further challenge. Okay. We're held up as role models. Role models we ourselves are not held up as role models, but there are role models we are presented with that we can't possibly live up to. Like James Bond.
True, yeah.
Say, well, just act the way James Bond will work. He's a fictional character.
Right.
We're shown examples of bravado that no sane human being would want to live up to. And just in the same way women are shown images of female perfection that's designed by nature to make them feel bad about themselves, so they'll rush out and buy cosmetics and the rest of it. So don't underestimate the deliberate, intentional power of media to make us feel lousy about ourselves and to turn each other against, I think what you're seeing in this election cycle, and I don't know when this podcast will be aired, but today is September, 26th, 25th, 2020. We're going through a presidential election cycle, and the media, the spin, how they're doing things, I think is designed to confuse us and turn us upon each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have never seen any, I don't want to get too political, Ricky, but I've never seen anything like this in all my years of voting in elections. This is not discourse. This is division and destruction. This is really difficult. So I wandered off point a bit, but I think
I wanted to bring it back to like, what are some, so clearly like the models that are portrayed to us are unachievable, or they're just something that men don't want to be. So like, how should men navigate through the waters just to become a confident man who gets what he wants and is actually of value to the people around him?
Well, that's a $85 million exposition, isn't it?
Right.
I don't think there's simple answers to that. I can give you some elements of it.
Okay.
I don't think you can be an alpha, whatever that. First, let's define our terms. What do we mean by an alpha? What does that mean? Everyone has a different definition.
Right.
The famous philosopher Voltaire said, before you debate with me, you need to define your terms. And this is not a debate. I'm not saying I'm Voltaire. And before we have an intelligent discussion, we have to define, what do you mean? So when you write about being alpha,
Right.
I'm curious to know, what do you mean?
Yeah, it's good that you brought that up, because I know that one of your videos, you're like, yeah, I don't think there are alphas. I'm like, oh, it's going to be a good thing to talk about. For me, I think the alpha is the leader, and it's the guy who's willing to do, like, go above and beyond. Because, right, like, you think back in the times, like, what gave the guy the right to be like the king? Like, I study like the classic archetypes, the king, warrior, magician, and lover. And so if you study like Viking times or whatever, what gave that guy the right to have that power? And it was like he gave the most, right? So he was able to have the most responsibility to be the leader of the tribe. So I think it's someone who rises to be a leader and then goes above and beyond to improve himself, that gives value, like, that steps up.
I like that definition. I think it's also possible that a leader is someone who stands up to the power structure. I
Yeah.
have a shirt that says "Speak truth to power,"
Mm.
and it's funny. I'll just tell you something odd. About 2 years ago, for shits and giggles, I was feeling kind of stagnant.
Okay.
I thought to myself, what's something I could do that my friends would say, there's no way Paul's my real name. No way Paul would ever do that. I thought, let's join a little self-improvement cult. So what the fuck? Someone recruited me into it. I plopped down $3,000, one of the worst decisions I ever made. And a lot of this was about shaming people in front of the group. And finally, I got it. And they were shaming someone. I spoke up. I said, this is coercion, plain and simple. You're coercing this person and you're shaming them in public. So on the lunch break, the trainer called me over, got right in my face and said, what are you doing? He didn't bat an eye. We were literally nose to nose. I said, I'm evaluating you. He said, dare you evaluate me? You don't have 30 years of experience doing transformational work with people all around the globe. He stepped into that one. I said, as a matter of fact, I do. Anyway, I refused to shut up, and subsequently they shut me out. And I proceeded to rip them to pieces. There's a moral to the story. It's getting there very shortly. So I was ripping them to pieces. The leader of there were two owners of this cult. They were both terrified that I was going to destroy them on public media. So I met with one of them, and she was going, just listening. I said, look, you get it half right. You talk about leaders as being people who are willing and able to enroll other people in their vision. That's half right. But leaders also will stand up and speak truth to power and allow people to have their own voice, and you don't do that. So I think part of being an alpha is speaking truth to the power structure.
Right.
If you look at people like Martin Luther King or Galileo, who said, wait, if you look through the telescope, Earth is not the center of the universe. There are other planets out there. People who are willing to speak truth to power and take the consequences, I think, are also alpha, even though they may not have confidence in other areas of their life.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of different elements to it.
Yeah. Risk taking is a huge one. I think that's like one of the most common patterns. And that's kind of like shunned upon, like, I don't know, in our society, is not to take risks. But I think that's like why I like teaching guys success with women, because that's a microcosm. If you're willing to take the risk to go up, it's not whether you get a result or not, but if you're willing to risk rejection, your DNA is literally evolving as you're doing that to step up. Like, you feel better for doing that.
I can't speak to whether your DNA is doing that or not, because I don't have any way of scientifically measuring it. I don't think anyone does, but I certainly think it's good for you.
Yeah. I do like that, though. Speak the truth, or speak truth to power.
Right.
And I think that is too. And I think you kind of hit a note on it with that story of like the cults. Like, there's two like forms of power, right? There's like the power that tries to take control and govern.
Right.
And then there's the other power that actually empowers people, like you're saying, like Galileo, or someone finding a new technology, taking those risks. He's actually empowering the tribe. And I think that's why we're going through a huge shift in society as well, is because like there's power, like power dynamics are so fascinating for me to study as well. And so I think those things are shifting massively as well. And so you have some power dynamics which are trying to control, and trying to maintain the power that they
Right.
have, and it's becoming very obvious. And then you have other power dynamics, which I think is like kind of what the conscious alpha is, like the brand, like what the message behind my brand is like the guys that rise up and actually are solving problems that are empowering the good of the whole, the good of the tribe, which is humanity or
Correct.
whatever.
Correct.
Um,
So if I could step in,
yeah, yeah,
there's the appearance or imitation of alpha
yeah,
in the context of that cult. The trainers were super alpha. They held all the power because they could always just tell you to get the fuck out,
right.
or they could shame you in public. But in that context, they were out. They were had the appearance of alphas. They were really just abusing power. They were
Hmm.
authoritarian. In their context of their home life, who knows? Maybe their wife kicked them around and told them take out the garbage. And it's also contextual and situational. If I'm pulled over by a cop, I'm going to take a submissive, either an equal or if need be a submissive role,
Hmm.
right? Because my survival or my freedom may depend upon it. So
Right.
I think there's flexibility in communication, being able to read the power dynamics of the situation is a crucial skill. And you have to be willing to admit there is such a thing as a power dynamic.
Yeah.
You have to admit that it's there before you can see it. And then you have to see it before you can manipulate it, use it, utilize it, make use of
Hmm.
it. Right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and one more
Go
thing, and I've been accused of stepping on people. Mea culpa, I'm guilty. I
ahead.
don't mean to do it. I'm trying to. It's my way of contributing. And if you even talk about power dynamics and power exchange between men and women,
Yep.
you will be attacked and vilified in this culture.
Yeah.
I was attacked and vilified when I started going on talk shows in 1990.
Yeah. I remember that.
Yeah, now, but I controlled the situation. Remember, you've seen that
Hmm.
famous Jane Whitney thing. I completely controlled it because my thought was, you are all my bitches, including the producers. That was my attitude towards the host and the producers of the show. Like, you're all my bitches. I'm not stuck in here with you. You're stuck in here with me. Let's go. Let's dance.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting seeing that, and I think you raise a good point, or a few good points too. On the, I think that's what a lot of guys are emulating as well too, because they want to have that ability to appear. The keyword being appear alpha. And so they copy what they see other guys that appear to be in power doing. But like you said too, that's not actual power. That's more tyrannical behavior too. And I see that as aggressively getting rooted out of society too, like as a whole. Like I feel like those type of things are, they maybe worked in the past, but
Right.
now they're not anymore. And so
And
like social dynamics are like quickly fucking changing. And that's why I like what I do, because it's like, even going out and talking to women, I feel like every day or every weekend, like the dynamics are changing a bit. And so it's like a puzzle to see like, okay, like where are things heading now, and getting a beat on it. And then the other thing you talked about too, the other point was like a lot of times those guys that are doing that behavior, like you said, it was probably like a parent or someone that did that to them that probably trained into them. It's almost like a cycle of hates, like a, and it probably stems from like self-hate in a sense that was like passed on generationally, right, from like our parents or whoever, of like, this is what power, this is what being strong is. But then it was like backwards, and it was actually like really fucked up to us, and it's just like this cycle of abuse in a way. And so now we have to like go take a step back and be like, okay, well, what is actually being a leader and empowerment and strength? What does that look like? And it looks different. It actually looks like where you're helping people and going above and beyond to give, not to fucking take.
I think you can only do that if you have a good system for emotional regulation. Here's what I mean.
Okay.
Here's what I mean by this. I've worked with a lot of traumatized men. I mean,
Okay.
really heavily traumatized. And if you look at the work of people like Peter Levine, who wrote a book, I think called Walk the Tiger or Walking the Tiger,
Okay.
he talks about when people are traumatized, they have two choices. They can fight or they can freeze. Yes, there's flight and there's fuck and the rest of it, but
Mm.
they can flee, they can freeze, or they can flood. That's what he talks about. They flood or they freeze.
Okay.
So veterans who have been traumatized, you'll see them suddenly flood with emotion and throw things around or even get violent. And other times they just freeze their family out. They freeze. So people who have had bad emotional situations and or chronic trauma, low grade trauma, like having no woman in your life and being socially isolated, that's traumatic.
Yeah.
They'll either freeze and feel nothing and be numb, or they'll suddenly flood and let their emotions just take over everything and lose their perspective on their situation. Those people are very difficult to mentor and to heal and to coach because they don't have emotional regulation. The skill of learning to regulate yourself and to co-regulate with others without glomming onto them, because we're hardwired to be social creatures and to co-regulate our emotions by being with other people. If you're hurting badly, it's hard to self-regulate, and then it's hard to co-regulate without driving people away with being needy. We all need others. It's essentially needing others. That's how we're hardwired. And being needy is a way to drown out the flames of your own flooding, or to heat up your own freezing so you can feel alive. These are, as a healer, most people don't know this because so much is made of the stuff as I appear in the game. But what Neil never covered, Neil Strauss, if anyone has not read the game, is that half of my work has been as a healer, because it's not sexy, it's not exciting. You can't write a scandalous book about it.
Right.
And in your journey, I don't know if you're aware of it, but you're healing people with your words. I don't know if you coach people personally, but you will have to, if you're not already.
Oh yeah.
Step into the role of the healer, the wounded healer.
Yeah.
That's a classic archetype of someone who takes their wound, goes down into the underworld, comes back up with power, but never fully heals. The wound is always there.
Yeah. No, I've probably in the last year and a half have started to come to the realization that I'm a healer. Kind of like you said too, and I was kind of pissed about it because I'm like, God, that's not sexy. That's not badass. But my whole thing now is like, how do I make it badass for guys to help? But yeah, I definitely feel like that's a part of it, and that's why I'm trying to like motivate guys to find their purpose. I view that as like, and I've done this with myself personally. I feel like your wound is your purpose. Like you said, I've definitely studied the hero's journey and experienced it, of like going into the underworld, dark night of the soul, all that. And yeah, it's fascinating. And yeah, you come back and you see other guys hurting, and you just want to help because you remember what it was like to be in their position.
Yep. So. And I'll tell you what, even with all the work and all the success, that pain at times still overwhelms me.
Yeah.
Because it went that deep. And it became so part of my identity. It still overwhelms me from time to time. I still have to consciously do a practice. And sometimes when things are really difficult, I do the practice every day. Because, and the other thing is, I live with clinical depression and bipolar. It's just part of my genetic heritage. So
yeah,
pretty much every day or every other day, I need to do a practice to stay level and to be happy and empowered. We can't underestimate the power of a daily practice to emotionally regulate.
Very true.
It's that's I don't know why the universe is wired that way, or I'm an agnostic, but I talked to my girlfriend the other night. She's very, very, very attractive, and she was upset about the way men treat her. And I said, look, honey, every benefit, every gift carries with it a corresponding drawback.
Yeah.
Your gift is that you're super hot. The drawback is guys will do anything to get in your pants. Anything.
Yeah.
And people will only see you as a hot body.
Yep. Yeah, it's very true with what you said. It's that almost like that law of duality. And like whenever it's like you're always given like a gift and a curse. And yeah, I've dealt with depression since I was 14. And I think actually within the last year or two, I've kind of come to terms with it and kind of like befriended my depression in a way, because it gives you a view of the world that you wouldn't normally see if everything was going well, right? Like when everything's going well, you're just kind of cruising. Like I just cruise. I'm like, yeah, life is good. Like, why aren't you happy? But then when you're depressed, you kind of see like the what is it, like the underbelly, right? And where people are suffering and You get some deep insights
I'm
for
laughing
sure.
with agreement. That's not the laugh of ridicule. That's the laugh of agreement.
Yeah. So I think and that's why I think too, it's shifting your perspective. And so that's why I try to help a lot of guys to do. It's like, look, if you're suffering from depression or whatnot, stop viewing it as a curse and start seeing the gift in it. And I think that's very hard, like when you're first at the beginning, because you're just in pain. So you got to kind of help them out of that. But what have you found to like help guys with co-regulate their emotions? Like, what have you found that helps them, like, especially guys that are like
Med-
isolated?
well, first and foremost, to have some kind of meditative practice.
Okay.
It sounds trite, but it's true. To exercise, I cannot keep my emotions regulated and
Mm.
up to date unless I pretty much exercise every day or every other day, and it requires some discipline. The girlfriend was over last night. I said, "Honey, you're gonna have to watch me exercise or go do something else because I need to do this."
Yeah.
She's very good about it.
Yeah, I feel that like energetically, like depression, like I can feel the energy in my body where it's like where it feels just heavy. And I think like even for me, like when I do exercise, it kind of like stretches out that energy so it or gets rid of it. It's like excess energy. And yeah, I totally agree with meditation as well. Recently
You're,
I've been doing breathing exercises and
yep,
I think that's been helping
yep.
the Wim Hof and that helps kind of like
I've heard a lot about this guy. I've got to check him out.
yeah, you can
He's the guy, isn't he the guy who can sit in ice and snow and not have it bother him?
yeah, he does crazy shit where he's like biohacked himself, where I think he like even climbed like Everest or something just in some shorts or it's just some
I
ridiculous
wouldn't
shit.
recommend, I don't recommend that.
But he
Don't try this at home.
yeah, if you go to YouTube, you can do Wim Hof breathing exercise and he has a 10-minute video which just does your breathing and I love it. Like I did this morning and you can hold your breath too and I can see like where my energy is like kind of trapped a little bit and like release it and it feels really good. It really helps regulate everything. Um, but yeah, let's go down deeper the rabbit hole of
Love it.
you becoming a healer. Like I want to hear more about that of like what kind of what got you down that process a little bit and then like what were some of the things you enjoyed about doing that work that helped guys.
Here's what happened. This is a funny story, but it's true. Early on in my career, I did a lot of live seminars, 5 a year, I think, all over the place. And they were very profitable back then because it was the only business model out there. And I was the
Mm.
only one doing it. If you Googled it wasn't even Google, it was uh, Mozilla or Firefox. If you put it in there, put in pickup seduction, I was the only name that came up. Anyway, I noticed that some guys would come to the seminar and they would send me emails saying, "Thanks, got girlfriends. It really worked." Some guys would come back and say, "Wow, I got laid for the first time," or I want to see what else you've got. That's why I came back. But some guys would come back and they would always sit in the same place of the room. They would sit to the left, my left, which would be the right in the room, in the
Mm-hmm.
first 3 or 4 rows. They kind of looked the same kind of dress, and they'd always raise their hand and say, "Ross, do you remember in your New Jersey 1994 tapes, tape 8, side A, 32 minutes in, you said the following?" And I would say, "No, I don't remember. Besides, have you ever actually used any of this stuff?" And they'd say, "Well, once or twice." And it really began to bug me.
Yeah.
I thought, wait, how is it that these guys are trapped? What's the structure of their being trapped? And how can I get them out of their own way to move up the learning curve? So I had to really dive into what keeps people stuck, what kind of self-defeating mechanisms and messages, and how can I take that apart? So
Mm-hmm.
that's what really motivated me to do it.
What were some of the self-defeating mechanisms that are the
Sure.
common
Well, one
ones?
of the big ones is, and this extends to all areas where you have to effort to make gains and to enjoy change,
Mm-hmm.
which is having a good strategy for learning from your mistakes. I often tell clients, you don't have a confidence problem or a discipline problem. You have a shitty learning strategy. And what I've found is a lot of ways that people try to learn from the mistakes is say, why did I screw that up? Why do I always screw up with women? I'd say to guys in my audiences, how many of you have ever gone fucked up with women and gone over that mistake over and over in your mind at least 100 times? Every hand would go up. I'd say, how many of you went over it 500 times? Every hand would stay up. 1,000 times, half the hands would stay up. And so when you dwell on a mistake, you're programming it back into your mind. Not deliberately, not because you want to punish yourself or you're some mysterious entity called the self-sabotager. It's just your attempt to try to learn. But in your attempting to learn that way, you're hypnotizing yourself back into the mistake, because the mind works on repetition, familiarity, and momentum. So if you program it, the brain can't tell the difference between what you dwell on over and over and over and what you're programming it to do. So naturally, in the same, even though you have a conscious intent that you're going to do things differently, the brain is going to look at the 1,000 times where you dwelt on the mistake, and it's going to make change exhausting. So teaching people a good learning process. I'm sure you've heard just learn from every experience, right?
Yeah. Well, that's
Does anyone
that's the mindset I try to take on and teach students to. Yeah.
Great. I'm sorry. Does anyone specifically tell you how? Did they tell you specifically how to do it?
That's a good question.
No. It's like saying, well, just learn to drive a car and not telling people how or giving them any instruction. The ability to learn from your mistakes without self-blame, without telling yourself stories of impossibility, or without sorrowing despair, but to create a neutral state and get mentorship. Get mentorship from you. Get mentorship from me. Find someone who's gotten there without having to drag themselves through needless pain. There's always going to be pain in life. Anyone who doesn't say otherwise is fooling you or fooling themselves, or both. But can you make pain what you're looking at rather than what you're looking through?
Right.
One of my affirmations, daily affirmations, is confusion and uncertainty are my joyous gateways to my clarity, my focus, my purpose, my vision, my wonderful achievement of my fantastic personal, business, and financial goals. So
I like that. That's awesome.
Make friends with confusion and uncertainty, because if you're going to move forward, they're going to be your constant companions.
Yeah, that's awesome. So how would you, I like that question. Does anyone teach you how to learn from it? What are some like key things? Are there like key questions that guys can ask themselves in a situation to take it apart?
This is something I'll go as something about you didn't ask me to mentor you, but I'm going to do it anyway. As a coach, train your students to first ask, what did they do right? Okay. What did they do right in the preparation phase? Anything they could have done in the preparation phase. What did they do in their initial approach of talking to a woman? What did they do correct in the midpoint? What did they do correct, even the smallest way of making their close, of dealing with rejection or resistance, whatever it was? What did they do right? Rewiring people to think about, what did they do right? What did I do? What was my small win? Even the smallest win. Yeah. That is something that is given a lot of lip service, but it's a big deal, because in this culture, we're taught to look at our mistakes. Yep. See, nowadays, I don't think they'd even do papers, but back then you would take a test, you'd hand in the paper to the teacher. The next day she'd hand it back with all the red marks where you did something wrong. Yeah. I don't know if you online learning, you even do that. I don't know. I'm a dinosaur. I lived when Triceratops and T-Rex were roaming the earth still.
Right. Yeah, I think those are good questions. Yeah, I usually do like the three things that are like, what'd you do well? And I totally agree with like why that's important too. And it's so funny, especially with students. And I like how you brought that up. We're just wired to look at the mistakes, because I know I had like one student who was a hard case, and he finally like ended up started getting a girl that he was seeing and hooking up with. And he was like still unsatisfied, because in his head, he was comparing himself to like a celebrity who has all these women around him. And I'm like, dude, like, that's great, but like, look how far you've come. Like before, you didn't even have women giving you a time of day, and they were just patting you on the back saying it's nice to meet you. And now you have a girl sucking your dick every so often. Like that's a big win. Like, let's celebrate it.
You have to surrender. One of my affirmations is, I surrender my right to compare myself with others who are further down the path. Yeah. And embrace my practice of blessing their success, seeking their mentorship and guidance. There's always going to be people further down the path than you. So if you
Mm-hmm.
bless their success, and if you refuse your right to destructively compare yourself, notice what I said. I said you refuse your right to, or you surrender your right to.
Mm.
That acknowledges, yeah, you have the right to do it if you want to. No one said you don't have the right to do it. But just like you can give up your right to remain silent, never do it. When a cop talks to you,
Yeah.
never talk to the police. So I
So,
talk about what will you surrender and what will you embrace.
mm, yeah, I like that, and I like the
And who
affirmation on.
and who will you bless? What if you took on the and what if you took on, and this is really diving into airy fairy new age shit, which I don't like because it's imprecise, but what if every time a girl confused you or rejected you, you said thank you for showing up as my teacher and my guide.
Yeah,
You flourish and prosper and grow. I release you now with love. What if you did that with every negative thought that came up? Thank you for showing up as my teacher and my guide. I release you now with love. Or thank you for showing up with the intention of being my teacher and guide. I release you now with love. What if you
yeah,
just made that a practice? It sounds crazy, but if you
right.
do it after like 2 or 3 weeks, it's been said it takes 2 or 3 weeks to wire in a new habit. I don't know whether that's true or not, but let's assume it takes 2 or 3 weeks. You begin to see the world in a different light. It won't hurt as much. Your pain will be something you look at rather than something you're looking through. I'll give you another piece of mentorship, and you haven't asked, and if you don't want this, I don't mean to
No,
appear
this is
arrogant.
this is great. I'm soaking it in. So share away.
A big change happens for your students and for humans when they're no longer looking through their patterns, but they're looking at them.
Okay.
So someone could come to me as an NLP practitioner and say, hey, I have a phobia of snakes. Can you fix that? And yeah, I can fix it. And that's one little piece of a reaction. How do I help them develop a state of mind where they can look at things rather than through them? And that requires a whole holistic approach. If you feel bad in your body because you're not eating right or you're not exercising, it's going to be hard to call upon that. It's a whole discipline, and no one talks about it. But it's very well. No, that's not true. That's patting my back, ego in an egoistic way. But very few people talk about it, and very
Mm.
few people have a methodology for doing it. And what I see still in the community, I keep my head down, but occasionally people make me pop it up and say, "Do you know what so and so is doing?" They're still setting that example of, I am an alpha. I take what I want. Look at me.
Right.
I've got muscles. I own a strip club. I know somebody does, and I fuck every woman I want. Good for you.
Where do you where do you think the community should be focusing on?
I don't know. I'm no longer involved in it. I don't care.
Mm.
I created a Frankenstein. Now, instead of people chasing it with torches, they're trying to dress like it and grunt like it.
That's funny.
I'm not responsible for what is metastasized into something that's just bizarre.
Yeah. What do you think a lot of guys misunderstand about women that you could clue them in on?
That they're human beings. They have the same confusions and emotions. And this is not terribly original. And it's only anything I say today or anything you ever hear me teach is only my model. I don't get up there and say this is true with a capital T, nor do I
Right.
think, I don't say it's science, although there could coincidentally be some science in it. My general view is that men and women are equally emotional, but we have our emotions in sequence and in compartments. When we're angry, we're angry. When we're sad, we're sad. When we're horny, we're horny. Women have emotions about their emotions. Just because they're hot and bothered doesn't mean it's on. And
Right.
they could have hesitation about being hot and bothered. They may want to soak in how, no pun intended, how excited they are about being hot and bothered. They may have curiosity about their being hot and bothered. They may have worry and shame about it. Then they may have curiosity about their worry and their shame. They tend to run their emotion. Not all women, They tend to run their emotions in cycles. So if you don't see it, you may think she's insane or she's rejecting you. In reality,
Hmm.
she's just chewing on shit.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of guys, they're just trying to get over the hump of feeling confident within themselves. And then they're given all these like kind of cavemanish macho tactics, which are kind of giving them this facade of confidence. And because of that, that they're like working this facade, they're missing all the like social acuity and awareness of where they're at with the
That's
woman.
right.
And so,
I couldn't have said it better. And they're
yeah,
missing the ambiguity and messiness of relationship.
yeah,
Relationships are ambiguous. I had a huge fight with my girlfriend yesterday. I was furious with her because I thought she had done something that betrayed my trust. In
mm,
reality, it turned out to be an accident. She didn't intentionally do it. And so, but we were both one turn of the key, one fire away from ending the whole thing. So
so
there's a lot of ambiguity, and when you get into a relationship with someone, all of people's you're dealing with every relationship they've ever had, all their old painful patterns.
yeah,
It's messy and stumbling and complicated, and you have to have a real tolerance for ambiguity and uncertainty. Otherwise, you're going to take on bravado. Bravado is what happens when we can't deal with our own uncertainty
mm,
and our
yeah,
own confusion. So confusion and uncertainty, when they're properly managed, that's alpha. But
okay,
confusion and uncertainty, when you can't handle it, you have to either shut down or jump into bravado. And people who are out there, I think there are people out there in the community who are vultures. They're
yep,
locusts. They devour the hope of men, and they don't care what happens.
mm.
I would name somebody. One of the biggest is got deep pockets. I don't want to get sued.
I do like your affirmation on confusion and uncertainty.
Yeah.
What would be the antidote to that if that's what guys are dealing with, just to educate yourself and find out?
Understand, do some kind of meditative practice. I have
Yeah.
not been nearly as good as would serve me.
Mm.
Develop a meditative practice. Do affirmations that talk about confusion and uncertainty and how you're determined to deal with it. I'm going through a lot of confusion and uncertainty right now about what my business model is going to be.
Mm.
It's very difficult for me, and it's very easy to compare myself to others who have it wired and they're 30 years younger. And I have to make a deliberate, I have to make a deliberate effort every day not to do that.
Yeah, I like that, and it's very powerful. Can,
I wish life were, simpler and didn't require so much efforting, but that's not the universe we were wired to be in. Just isn't. You can believe in the law of attraction and the secret and all you want and delude yourself. That's great. Have fun. But the
can you
people
talk a
who are,
little bit to the power of affirmations? Because I personally love them, but I know a lot of guys are like, well, that's woo woo, that's weird. Can you explain like how they work and why they're effective?
I think oftentimes they don't because they don't because
Okay.
uh, you're telling yourself things that your unconscious mind doesn't believe. So
Right.
I like to use, when someone comes to me, they're really stuck, I will take their thought pattern, I will bind it in time and remove it from their sense of identity. So let's unpack that. If someone says, I'm just a loser with women, you could tell them to say over and over, I'm a winner with women. I'm a winner. I'm a winner. I'm a winner. But the emotions of, no, I'm not, are going to come up because the unconscious mind will remember all the times you've lost.
Right.
In a struggle between the conscious and unconscious mind, the unconscious mind is going to win because it's a storehouse of all the shit.
Mm-hmm.
It's also a storehouse of all your ability. It's a remarkable thing. So I teach guys to say, up until now. If guys comes to me and says, I can't succeed with women, I'd say, what's the difference in saying I can't succeed or I'm a loser with women and saying, up until now, I did not own my skills to enjoy and create my success with my wonderful women.
Mm.
What's the difference? Aren't they both equally true? And they'd say, yeah, they are. So now, by saying up until now, You're really saying to the unconscious mind, thank you, I acknowledge there has been a problem. I'm not ignoring the messaging you're sending me. And then the unconscious doesn't have to hurt on you. And then when you say, I now claim my practice of my skills, it's no longer about being who you are. See, their beliefs, this is again just my model, an NLP model. There's beliefs about what's possible for you. What can you, is it possible for anyone to change? What you're capable of, am I capable of doing it? Do I deserve to have it? Am I equal to it? Can I give as much as I get? And then identity. And in my experience, at least, changing people's sense of identity is much more difficult than changing those first three. If you take apart those first three, then the fourth one, changing their sense of identity, it becomes much easier. So trying to change someone's sense of identity when they have a history of painful, incompetent, I don't mean that in a cruel way, less than optimum skill sets, make it about up until now and about a skill set they're going to claim rather than who they are. So affirmations that say, I am a winner, I am a winner, I am a winner, they're going to be exhausting at best and waste of time at worst.
Right.
But if instead you make it about skills, and let's say I'm a loser with money. Up until now, I didn't have the proper skills to flourish with money. And now I claim my gradually growing practice of learning about handling and properly investing my money. Not I am a winner, I'm a money magnet. Do you understand? One is about acquiring skill, which you can believe. You can believe you improve your skill by 1% a day, rather than making it about your entire identity. And conversely, people who are really stuck make it about their whole sense of self. They're global about it. Not only if they struggle with a particular woman, they say, I am a loser with women. And then they start generalizing to, I'm just a loser. And then they generalize to, what's the point? And then they generalize to, what's the point of being alive? So this is, you're laughing because I think that's the laugh of recognition.
Yeah. That was deep. I love it. Yeah, I think that's, you hit on the head with this focusing on the skills of affirmations, because like the generalized I'm a winner, like you said, like if you have a whole memory bank disagreeing with you, it's not going to click into place.
Great. Right. If you could push selected blank in your unconscious, but you can't, and your unconscious properly channeled is your friend.
It's fascinating. The more I study about it and you go deeper into getting it to work right. And it's crazy too, because then once you start getting it right, you get those affirmations correctly. I want to start talking about meditation here in a second, but doing those daily rituals, those daily success habits, life gets pretty fucking exciting, and you get these crazy experiences too, where things actually start working out for you and things start like generating the way they should, especially with like women or dating or whatever you're going for. But yeah, let's jump to meditation real quick, because I've been doing meditation for a while, and I feel that's something that's really helped heal me. And I'd like to get your thoughts on different ways guys can use meditation, or how you go about it. For me personally, I was thinking about what you said earlier, something to the effect of, I can't remember, something like if something pops up. I notice for me, like if a insecurity or something painful pops up, I'll just, instead of trying to fight the thought, because before I would try to reframe it, and sometimes that works, but I find what's more powerful is just to be with it and then just be unreactive to it. And when I'm unreactive to it, it's like a program that no longer serves a function, and it kind of just deletes itself, versus like trying to fight it, or again, like saying affirmations like
Beautiful.
I'm a winner, right?
You're a brilliant young man. We have to have more of these conversations off the air.
For sure.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. This is completely correct. Look, I have nothing to say about meditation that I did not learn from my teacher, Shinzen Young, Shinzenyoung.
Okay.
Shinzen, to my experience, and I've had many great teachers, including Richard Bandler, the co-founder of NLP. Shinzen is the next to my mom, and around similar to my mother, who's a great teacher to me, is the greatest teacher of my life. Anything you want to learn about meditation, he has a beginner's guide to meditation. He has the science of enlightenment. This guy's whole passion is to take the science of Western objective meditation
Mm.
and made it to the Eastern discipline of subjective experience and meditation. And that's his mission, his calling, his life. Just anything I do, one thing I do is add in energized breathing.
Okay.
There's a guy who said breathing has made many a sick man well and many a weak man strong.
Hmm.
Add in the energy of breath. So do energized breathing, breath of fire, pranayama. This is all stuff you can get online far more efficiently than anything you could learn from me. I one thing that I do my best to practice and endeavor to practice is to give credit where it's due and not to claim credit for something I didn't create. That's
Hmm.
why it's pissed me off in the past when people have taken from me and not at least given me credit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's frustrating. Um, what was I thinking? How can guys generate sexual attraction? What is like a like maybe like three components that most guys are missing if they just tweaked it a
Well,
bit?
first they need to understand how they show up. There's a difference in
Mm.
showing up sexual and showing up horny.
Okay.
Horny is I can't wait to fuck you. And sexual is I make no excuses for my desires as a man. I could fuck you if I wanted to, and I make no apologies for it.
Mm.
Horny is I gotta have it now. I gotta have it now. But if you look at it energetically, I have students say to me, I can't approach nines and tens. And I say, there's no such thing as nines and tens. There's
Mm.
only the level of sexual excitement you feel in your body. If you're at a 10 and your brain is full of your own jizz, you can't think straight. And if you can't think straight, how are you going to socially calibrate? How are you going to pay attention to our responses? So a lot of this is about energetic control.
Yeah, that's
Did you ever
brilliant.
see, did you ever see the movie Spinal Tap?
No, I haven't, but
You have to
it's
watch it. It's
classic. I've heard.
hilarious. It's about a mockumentary about a band of absolutely mentally retarded rock and rollers. And the interviewer is saying, I noticed your amps go to 11. Why don't you just make 10 louder? And the guy says, I'll go to 11. He doesn't get it. So learning to control the level of your sexual energy and being able to do it with breath and grounding into your feet and doing the rest of it,
Yeah.
super powerful.
Yeah, I think that's even key for guys to find like a mission in life or something else to focus on outside of just women. I found that with a lot of my students that help too, and that takes away a lot of the neediness of something to focus your energy into, that you can dive into. And I always try to tell guys like your purpose should be like your main woman, and every other girl is like your side girl, because like you want to put that focus into that because that's going to give you the charisma that you need to be that
Wait,
sexually attracts the guy.
wait. People have energy for a side girl? Oh, wait, I forget. I'm 62. I don't have the energy for one.
Uh, so let's jump back to, we talked about for being more sexually attractive. I love point number one was be sexual, not horny, and going into how to balance your energy, ground your energy. And I love that. I feel like that's where I'm headed to with
Yeah.
teaching more of my students that, and that removes the neediness. I feel like once you remove those needy vibes, you kind of generally understand how to respond to women, and you feel it like you're more in your masculine energy and you can feel feminine energy, and you can kind of, you almost just, what is that, intuitively pick up of how to um, engage with women. But what are a few other
Second,
points?
learn to use language.
Okay.
Never underestimate the power of language patterns to generate sexual attraction and interest. Those who think it's manipulative, I'll simply say, so is your thumb. Put your thumb and forefinger together. The manipulation means to move with deliberateness. So your thumb and forefinger work in opposition to and create and cooperation with each other to manipulate the world, to pick up objects and move it around.
Yeah.
Learn to use your languaging to trigger states of attraction and arousal and the rest of it.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't use the power of seductive languaging, if you will, hypnotic languaging, if you don't want to do that, then you're leaving nuclear warheads out of your arsenal. I'm telling you, it's incredibly powerful. It just is. So you need to resolve it and say, well, true alpha wouldn't use it. That's great. That's great. That's fine. Leave it off the battlefield and I'll beat your ass.
So what does that mean to you? Like, what are some examples of using language that is seductive?
I'll give you an example. Here, what's the difference in saying to a girl, what do you like to do for fun? Which every chump asks.
Right.
And saying, when you want to do something that makes you feel, damn, life's incredible. I got to get more. I got to get more of that. Yep. What is it that you can't stop yourself from doing? Now that's a different kind of question. It requires that she dive down into her fantasy mechanism, her mechanism for indulging herself, her mechanism for doing something that breaks her own rules and boundaries. And once she begins thinking along those lines, now you're just right next door to what gets her sexually aroused in the moment, in a matter of 20, 30-minute conversation.
Yeah.
If you ignore that, if you choose not to use it, you're crippling yourself. If you put it on the table and you're able to use it, then you begin to gain a tremendous amount of power and you gain some measure of predictability. You begin to distill out of the chaos of women a pattern that you can use to put milestones and actually get, listen to me, some predictability, some measure of structure, some measure of control. And that's what guys want. They want predictability and systems. And my outrageous claim is, you can move further down the path towards that if you incorporate this kind of languaging. You immediately got with just that one example.
Right. Well, I could feel it. Like, I mean, you can feel the first question is logical, and it puts you in a logical conversation. Right.
It's a data point conversation.
Yeah. Where the second one, I can immediately feel the emotional part of me being activated, where I have to respond in those things, and that's where you want to be, because that's going to elicit that desire and those emotions you want out of her. Yeah, it's powerful. Okay, so number 2 is use language. What would number 3 be?
I would say have the skill set to get physically, escalate physically to, I don't even like that, because I think you can always be physical in some form or another. Have just some finesse when it comes to, quote, I hate the term going for it, when it comes time to get physically intimate. How are you going to initiate that?
Yeah.
That's where some practical skill comes in, where we take it down to the street level.
Okay. And so, like,
how can you stretch a boundary without violating a boundary?
Right. And I think that's a huge thing, because a lot of guys, they hold back because they're so afraid of like violation, or like not having, like, girl freaking out and saying you didn't ask for consent or whatever. So
nowadays it's not so odd a fear. Depends on the context.
Okay.
Like if you're in college or working, I pity the guys who are in college now.
Why do you say that?
Because there's so many policies against sexual harassment. There's some places where it's getting to the point where you probably have to ask at every point, may I do this? May I take off your bra? May I touch your genitals? It's just ridiculous.
So what are some like usable practices that guys can do to start feeling comfortable being physical with women?
Well, we talked about it already, that women love sex. They hunger for it. The pussy is as needy for, the pussy needs the dick as much as the dick needs the pussy. So junk out this idea that women don't love sex or that they're giving you pussy. No, you're co-creating a sexual encounter together. You're not getting some pussy, you're giving some dick. I reframe it.
Yeah, that's powerful. And I think that changes the whole interaction too, of how you're coming about it, and it probably kills like more the nerves of it as well. Yeah. Ross, you've been a world of information. What would be like the last tip that you could give guys, if you had a message out there to help guys that are struggling with their dating lives, struggling to get confidence? What's something that you have to empower them?
We're all humans. We're all in the same boat. We were born wearing the same thing. We're going to go out someday. For the most part, not always. There are some predators out there, male and females, but for the most part, we're trying to figure it out. And
Yeah.
so have compassion for yourself and for others. And if you want to find out more about my work, I still have my website. I have a free video series. My site is old and not properly laid out. Haha. It's the first time I've used the pun. But if you go to the site, I do have a free video course. And to be quite transparent, I don't remember what it's on, but it's of high value. So if you go to seduction.com, it'll say sign up for the free video now. You'll get on my mailing list, but I'm not a spammer in particular. And you can find out more about my work that way. I want to thank you. You're one of the few young men who has their head screwed on straight and is giving a good message. So if I can assist you further, and let's talk some more. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Thanks, Ross. Thanks for being on the show.
Loved it.